Um, I would also point, since we're still on that particular topic, we have seen over the last several years a reduction in what the average rates of returns being assumed by retirement plans across this country have reduced. There are, as the chairman has said, some systems as low as 6 or maybe slightly under that. We do have some that are above 8 and some several points above 8. Our sister state in Alabama actually has an assumed rate of return of about 8.75%. Not that I necessarily want to compare us to Alabama. But you see that according to the National Association of State Retirement Administrators, the current as of February 2019, the average and median are somewhere around 7.29, 7.28. That is one of the reasons why our Board of Trustees will be considering reducing our assumption rate from 7.5 to 7.25. So I sum up all those comments to say that whatever you do in terms of administratively, we think that fit ought to be consistent with what our long-term performance has been of the system, to be fair to our employers, to be fair to the state. Getting a number, though, certainly would be able to show that. We have, I believe it was back in 2012, our Board of Trustees closed our amortization schedule. They selected 30 years as the rate. Why 30 years? Basically, two reasons I could tell you that. First and foremost, it was during the last decade that many state retirement systems realized we need to pay off that unfunded accrued liability. The Board of Trustees, as well as the state of Georgia and the legislature, in adopting employer contribution rates, recognized that that was a long-term feasible thing to do, and consequently, we are 5 years into what is a 30-year plan. If we had additional money, and if we could pay off that UAL, that would be something that we would look at doing. Obviously, that's a legislative prerogative. If you would like to legislate that, we do feel that our plan was put in place to be a responsible plan to pay off the long-term unfunded accrued liability, and we would like to continue to do that. Having a number about what that would cost us on an annualized basis is something, if you want to move forward with, we'd certainly be interested in knowing that. I think the realities of it are, to do both of these would be something that would be very difficult to fund. I share with the representative as well, sometimes we tend to talk about retirement from an emotional perspective as opposed to a realistic perspective. I will share with you, too, on a positive note, as we approve our actuarial study that will be approved in our May board meeting, you're going to see that funding ratio move from 74.4% to over 77%. All of our metrics are moving in the right direction. We would hope that whatever you do, you look at the facts of what the information is and make those decisions based on the facts of the system.
All right. Representative Martin, did you want to add?
Just real quick, I want to thank Mr. Evans for the information and for talking to me back during session and here and there, and there's a lot more to go. I guess what you said, and going back all the way to 1990 and the rate of return, I'm going to ask you in the form of a question, and maybe 6 is not the right number, and I appreciate you realizing capturing what I want to do, and that's just get a number so we can honor our commitments to our retired professionals and our current people that are teaching headed that way. But if we've been real close to our assumed rate of return, and over the last number of years, our unfunded liability is growing, it's because we have reverse amortization going on. We're owing ourselves more than we're putting in, because up until 2012 or 2013, we re-amortized the whole thing over 30 years. Now you are capturing whatever we owed that year. We have 26 more years on, or 25, and I applaud the board for doing that. So again, 15 years may not be the number, but I just, as a state legislature, I think we need to know that we owe that money, and the faster we pay ourselves back, the faster, if you earn your 7.5, 7.25, we don't keep getting in the hole. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, if you're making the number, your assumed rate of return, and we're still getting in a bigger hole, then either our mortality rates are off or some other assumption, or the reverse amortization is killing us. If we're $20 billion in debt and we're assuming a 7.5% rate of return on that, that's $1.5 billion a year that should be going in the system. We're not. I mean, the point I guess I'm getting at is 5 or 6 years ago, we were putting $1 billion a year in TRS. This past year, I think we put a little north of $2 billion, and the teachers are essentially getting the same benefit. That's twice as much money for the same thing. We got to pay ourselves. We got to pay our debt off. Not your fault. We got to pay it off.
And anything the state would like to do to help us pay off that UAL certainly increases the strength and long-term sustainability of the fund. But I think just keep in perspective the reality of the number you're going to get is going to be a big number. Yes, sir. And if you come up with several $100 million that you would like to put in above that every year, it gets us to a point where down the road, as we look into the future and we pay off that UAL, you actually will see those employer contributions reducing significantly below current levels.
Okay, all right. Anyone else have a question for?
I'm sorry, I do. Just looking at the bill, if there were to be a number put in on line 37 where it says shall not exceed 6%, since we are performing at a higher level at 7.5, so I guess what I'm wondering, would it make more sense for us to say it should not exceed where we are? Would give us the same message that we want that to go down. Am I wrong about that? I don't know that it's necessary at all, so I'm not putting you in a position of endorsing that, but so I'll say that.
I would say that there are some that would strongly feel that maybe that's not a number that should be legislatively identified for a number of reasons. We may find ourselves in the next decade in a period of time where we have interest rates and bond rates, perhaps hopefully not above 8%.
Gotcha.
So, legislatively, would we want to have our hands tied if we experience a period of time where our returns are realistically above and beyond what they currently are? So again, I don't think the chairman, I'm really, not to speak for the chairman, I'm not sure really he wants to see that in legislation, but I do know he wants to see a number.
Okay. May I follow up?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Okay, so if we're all interested in paying off the debt. We all want that to happen. I'm having some angst about this being the way that we can get to that because we're changing so many different things. Is there another way that we can pay that debt off? I know you said that we could put more money in. Is that that's the way that we can pay off more debt more of the debt in a faster term?
I think what you're going to see if the bill goes to actuary and comes back, you're going to see that the number is going to be astronomical, and so then we start dialing back on our numbers. In other words, we might raise the 15 years to 25 years, and we might raise the 6 to 7, and we might do another study on it to see what kind of numbers we get then. What Chairman Martin is wanting to do is just get a starting point. He's wanting the numbers, and we can go from there. We understand that the numbers are going to be really big. I mean, it's going to be in the $4 to $6 billion range.
I figured it'd be 8 to 10.
So, I talked with the actuary this morning. He didn't feel that high. So that's what we're looking at. And so I'd like to see the numbers. I'd like to see what it's going to cost us. And we know that they're going to be astronomical, so we can see what this would cost us. It's kind of like you want to buy a house and you see what the 15-year mortgage is going to be. And you think, well, I can't afford that, but I can afford a 20-year mortgage. And we could look at the 20 years and see that. So maybe that answers your question.
It does help. And the other thing is, I have real concern about the state putting a lot of money into TRS to pay off their debt when we have ERS,
It's our debt.
well, paying off the debt, but, and then we have ERS who won't help too, trying to get their retirement to come up to a more livable wage for some of their employees because they haven't had COLAs in over 10 years. So we're talking about a finite amount of resources, and we've got two real big asks within the retirement system that are big hits to that finite amount of resources, and I'm trying to rectify in my mind it seems like there needs to be a little give and take on both sides to get to where we need to be, and I was just.
Well, we don't have anything to give on ERS because there's no legislation, but we've got.
I'm talking about how, a money plan of how we could get to where we need to be.
I think that's what Chairman Martin's looking
got
at, trying to get to. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I know I'm between us and lunch.
No, I'm between us and lunch. You're between me and me.
All that. Well, I know, I think it's important.
Sure.
Ms. Buckner, Representative Buckner just laid out, I think the important point here, and that's what I wanna be clear here, is you're talking about the ERS, and I'm not, it's a policy decision about, should there be more COLA, should there be more retirement? What I am most concerned with, the TRS system is what we've already promised. If I like it or not like it, the unfunded liability is not something this committee decides if we're gonna pay back, right, Mr. Evans? I mean, we are contractually obligated to make that payment. To sit here and not, there's three pieces of this. The employee cost, the normal cost, and the unfunded liability cost add up to 20-something%. It's like 7.33, and then whatever the unfunded liability. For us to continue to make that number artificially, I won't say artificially low, but I think based on our assumptions, that's been lower than it should be, gives us the impression we have money to spend in other places. And we owe it to this system to make it whole first before we make commitments in other places. We have to live within our means. And no, we're not gonna be able to get, to 15 years. I wish we could, because failing to do that, that means we're costing the taxpayers a 6, whatever the number is, 7.25, 7.5% return on money we owe ourselves. It's like borrowing from your own IRA. That's essentially what we've done. And the longer we keep not paying that off, the more money it costs the taxpayers just to get the same benefit to our current retirees and our future retirees, right? Mr. Evans, I mean, letting these unfunded liabilities get bigger and take longer to pay off doesn't get any more money to our retired professional educators.
You are correct.
So the faster we pay that off is the fastest way we can get in a place to do more for more people, either in retirement or on the ground.
Okay, we've got, I think, 2 other people that would like to talk. Margaret, are you wanting to speak?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Chuck, are you wanting to speak?
Yes, sir.
Chuck Clay, are you wanting to speak too?
Yes, sir.
I saw you sitting up. I was going to say one Chuck is enough, but I saw you sitting over there. I thought maybe you were getting ready to launch over here to the podium.
That Chuck.
Go ahead.
Good morning. I'm Margaret Ciccarelli from Page. I want to apologize for not wearing my lobbyist badge today and speaking before you. I don't think I was emotionally or logistically prepared to be back at the Capitol this soon after the session adjourned. On behalf of 95,000 Page members, I just want to compliment Chairman Martin for making sure that we can achieve our long-term goals of fulfilling our promises. We had a great conversation with him about this bill last week with my executive director, and we appreciate his consideration. Weighing in on certain elements of the bill, I will say that refreshing the tables more frequently than 5 years is not something that gives us concern. We want to get the most accurate idea out there of those of trends. But we do have some concerns about mandating or capping the expected rate of return at 6%. And that's something that we very frankly discussed with him, and he shared his philosophy on that. As Dr. Evans said, the long-term rate of return for TRS is about 7.25. And so it's appropriate that the TRS Board of Trustees is considering dropping that anticipated rate of return for their calculation by 1/4 point from 7.5 to 7.25. So kind of artificially lowering the expected rate of return to 6% would certainly explode the unfunded liability of the plan. And like several of you have expressed, we are concerned about what it will look like if one of these actuaries come back and show that we've got this huge unfunded liability, when in fact nothing about the plan performance has changed. And in fact, the plan is doing better, and we've come to a 77% funded rate, which Dr. Evans mentioned. So regarding the anticipated rate of return, that is kind of our position on that. As for the amortization and switching from 30 to 15 years, we wouldn't mind seeing the numbers on that. If y'all have the money to put more money in, we'd certainly take it. We know that there are other priorities in the budget, as Representative Buckner said, particularly with ERS and with healthcare costs. But it's never a bad idea to get an idea of how much cost is out there and what it would take to the heavy lift of speeding up our repayment. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you today.
All right, thank you. Okay, Chuck?
I'm sorry. There's a lot of Chucks, Mr. Chairman. I said yes, but there's a lot of Chucks.
Oh, only one out there.
Yes, sir.
Just a minute, Chuck. Representative Wilkins, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to clarify. So you said that you're okay with reducing it to the 15 years, to the undefined, just to see what it looks like.
I think getting a number is not a bad idea. I think that it's going to be a huge number, and that then we'll have a serious conversation when we come back in the 2019 session. But I think along with that number, it's important for us to be able to explain the significance of that to the public and to the press that we have represented here today, to make sure that people understand that our TRS system is solid and that we intend to pay our debts. But that this gives us an idea of what it would look like to speed up payment on our mortgage, so to speak.
Gotcha. I like the mortgage now.
All right, Chuck?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee, and Representative Martin. I certainly appreciate your concerns about the well-being of TRS funds and share those. I just asked this committee again to have the same concerns for all of its retirement systems. The same promises have been made to members of different systems, and that the financial well-being of the state has been pledged on the for all systems. So if I'm not sure that this bill is the right way to go about achieving the objectives that Representative Martin wants to do, but I ask, and I'll ask at this time that the bill be amended that address all retirement systems before a vote is taken to pass it. I should have done that for the last bill as well, but when you asked if I was looking for volunteers for the bill.
All right.
So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Tell us who you are. These other folks didn't, a couple of them didn't tell us who they were, but they're infamous and we know who they are.
Good morning. I'm Tony Smith, President of Georgia Association of Educators Retired. We are concerned too and appreciate Representative Martin's work on this bill and Representative Benton's work on his bill. We too believe that it would be a mistake to cap the assumed rate at 6%. It would hamstring the trustees, and it is not in keeping with the rate of return performance that we've seen over the past few years, as Dr. Evans pointed out. So while we appreciate the fact that the actuarial study needs to be done to look at a shorter period of time to pay off our debt, we think that the numbers are going to look bad to the public. They are going to cost the numbers will cost the legislature an amount of money that it cannot pump into the system. And so we think that perhaps 20 years is a more realistic realistic term than 15 years. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Representative Wilkerson.
Actually, I think you answered the question that you're fine with. Would you be okay with, you prefer 20, would you be okay with 15 though, or are you 20 as low as we should probably go in your mind?
On a personal level, I think 20 is as low as we ought to go, but 15, if we start at 15 and then roll it back to 20, that would be fine.
Thank you so much.
All right, number 16.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just trying to be clear because I had to step out a moment. Is it my understanding that the 3 individuals that just spoke, they are not in favor of a study on this particular legislation? Is that my understanding?
I think that they're in favor of a study, but they're wanting to raise the numbers up.
Okay.
Okay. All right. One
Thank
more statement, Chairman Martin.
Mr. Chairman, when we go forward, I know, is the chair, you have your item for later on. You're still planning to come forward with 593?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chairman, you are asking for a 6%, and that's the only thing I think you have in that bill.
Right.
If it would please the chair, I am trying to put money in the TRS system that we owe, and I'm hearing a little pushback of it, that I'm trying to put too much in it, which I find sort of counterintuitive to the folks that would be getting it. But I would be amenable, again, if we get forward on a motion on this, I'd like to strike lines 38 and 39 and sort of splitting the difference here because the board's going to 7.25. If we would go to 6.75, since the chairman's going to go to 6 as a standalone version for his bill, I'd be fine with doing that.
Why don't we leave yours as it is, and I'll change mine.
Okay, yes, sir. And that way we get a look at both of them. Yes, sir.
All right. Representative Wilkerson, one more.
Thank you, I'm sorry. I was trying to get to this point, but my preference actually would have been if you had struck lines 34 through 37, since the chairman has his bill, and I think everybody is comfortable with doing an actual study to get a faster payback. I think the concern is really that interest rate. So if we had this bill just addressing the faster payback, I think it might move with a little less opposition, and then have the chairman's bill move with the interest rate if we so decide at that point. And if you would be amenable, I think that I would be happy to make that motion, or you can make that motion. I think that would help me, at least, just one person.
Okay. All right. Why don't we strike the 6% from yours and leave it in mine, and that way yours will have 2 things in it.
That's fine. I'm just trying to get the
Mm-hmm.
picture to look at.
Okay, and then mine will show the 6%, what that would do. And we can go from there. And we'll make those changes in just a minute. First of all, I need a motion on this bill. Have a question.
As you explained that, on line 34, we talk about the assumed rate. Should we, instead of taking it totally out, should we put it at 7.25 where it currently is? I mean, that's what they're hitting right now.
No, let's. Representative Martin, what's your number gonna be? 6.75?
Mr. Chairman, I would be fine just removing that. I believe if we remove it,
Okay, well, I can do 6.75,
yes, sir.
and the system's already doing 7.25, so we can see the number there.
That's fine.
Okay, all right.
We could, if it please the chair, when we get to that point, I don't know if the chair will allow me to move my own bill or not, or if somebody would do that, I would suggest when we get there that we strike lines 34 through 39 and allow
Okay.
the attorney to.
Let me get a motion and a
Yes, sir.
second, and then we'll do the amendment real quick here. All right, we have a motion on the bill.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion to pass. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Now, we have several proposals of amendments, so, Representative Martin, if you'll tell us what your amendments are.
Yes, sir. If I could, I would move that we strike lines 34 through 39 from the bill. That would be the portions of the language that speaks to the interest rate and also the interest rate smoothing. I mentioned the interest rate smoothing in the introduction. So I'd strike those lines with the comment that allow the attorney to, renumber appropriately in terms of the notification of E's
Okay.
to D's and so forth. So that would be my motion, and also to properly adapt those changes in the caption of the bill.
All right, I have you putting that in form of a motion?
Yes, sir. I'd move that, delete lines 34 through 39, and also give the attorney instructions to reflect those changes
Okay.
in the caption of the bill.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. Any other discussions, any other amendments anyone wants to offer to the bill? Okay, so we have a motion for the amendment. Everyone understands the amendment. All those that are in favor of the amendment, if you would raise your hand. Anyone opposed to the amendment? All right, now we're to the bill. All those in favor of House Bill 677 as amended, raise your hand.
667.
I thought, isn't that what I said, 667? I'm sorry. 667. All right, all opposed, like sign. All right, bill passes as amended. All right, I had planned to take a lunch at 12, but we've got 2 bills left, and we're gonna go ahead and do those. Do what? Prayer work. Oh, you been down there praying?
All right, Mr. Chairman, House Bill 593.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. 593 deals with a new code section. The Tax Commissioners Retirement Fund of Georgia, we're going to be creating this Tax Commissioners Retirement Fund, and it will be open to certain tax commissioners, tax collectors, tax receivers, and the Secretary Treasurer of the fund. The bill creates a board of commissioners consisting of 7 members. Members would be required to pay $105 per month, and additional funds would come from a $3 fee collected by county tax commissioners on each delinquent tax bill. Members are eligible for benefits once they reach 96 months of credible service, turn 60 years old, and are no longer serving as a full-time tax commissioner. The benefits would be $12 for each month of credible service in the fund. This is not, we hope, going to impact participation in any other retirement system, and the state auditor will conduct an annual audit of the board and the report to the General Assembly. The tax commissioners are the only constitutional officers without a legislatively approved retirement plan. This includes the sheriffs, clerks of court, probate judges, magistrate judges, superior court judges, district attorneys, essentially every other elected official we work with in our courthouses. The tax commissioners were previously included in the state retirement system prior to 2011 due to the fact that they collected hundreds of millions of state tax dollars, and we hope there will be more in the future. The tax commissioners were excluded from the state retirement system due to the severe recession and the requirement of the state to reduce expenses. We've had 2 elections since then, 2012, 2016. We have 81 tax commissioners with no state retirement. They might have a local retirement, but there are a lot of areas that don't have a local retirement system for them. By this time the plan becomes law and the 8 years vesting period ends, we will have almost no tax commissioners still on state retirement. Many tax commissioners have no retirement plan at all, or a plan that is funded only by their own money. House Bill 593 uses no state or county funds. No taxpayer who pays their property tax bill on time will ever contribute a penny to this retirement plan. And it's already been vetted by the Southern Actuarial Services and has been deemed actuarially solvent. Be glad to answer any questions anybody on the committee might have.
Anybody have any questions for the chairman on this bill? 17, who's that? Representative Tarvin.
I'm not being flippant about this, but if somebody's in the hospital, we charge them a tax to pay for people that can't pay their bills, and then on the sheriff's thing, we was gonna fund it through people getting paper served on them, but somebody that can't already pay their taxes, we're gonna tax them more to, I mean, I don't have a better idea, but how much money are you talking about? Are a lot of people late forever and ever on their taxes, or we
Well,
have
it
any?
says $3 collected by the county tax commissioner on each delinquent tax bill.
And that would fund their retirement system?
Apparently so, that and the $105 a month that they would be paying.
Thank you.
All right, number 11.
There's either a lot of delinquent tax bills or they gon'
Representative Ridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have other states enacted legislation that creates similar retirement systems for their tax commissioners that's funded like this with by past due taxpayers?
that I cannot answer. I've got 2 tax commissioners here. If y'all would like to come up and if you can help me answer this question or any other questions that we have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Kevin Payne. I'm the Floyd County Tax Commissioner up in Rome, Georgia. I'm also the president of the Georgia Association of Tax Officials and representing the 159 elected tax commissioners in Georgia. I don't know the exact answer to your question, but I will tell you that every other plan that we have for constitutional officers and other local elected officials are funded through fees that they collect in their office, so it's a similar funding plan.
And if I may ask one more question, will this plan address the tax commissioners who are currently not in a retirement plan?
Well, if approved next year, they would have to enter next year, so there's no, they cannot get service already that they had, so the 81 tax commissioners that were elected in the last 2 elections will have to start once this plan is approved and get 8 years of vesting. So actually, by the time next year's an election year, we're on every four-year terms. So by the time this plan is enacted, if it were to be enacted, and 8 years of vesting, we'd be 3 elections down the road. So this is really a plan for people that are coming along behind us 20, 30 years down the road.
Representative Bentley.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is relating to, in addition to everything that's been said already, delinquent taxes. And I'm just thinking about the 4 counties that I represent, like Taylor County, for instance. What happens if the number of delinquent payers decreases?
Certainly considered that. I've been a tax commissioner since 2008. Actually worked in the office since 2006. So I've been around since the height of the housing boom through all the recession and now back out again. I can tell you that the number of delinquent tax bills that I had back during the height of recession, the 2009, 10 years, is about double what we have today. So if this plan is actuarially sound today, it's really going to always be actuarially. In other words, when the economy unfortunately does go south again, we know it will go in cycles, we will actually collect more money in this fund. So today really should be the low point of the collection of people in a better economy are going to be able to pay their taxes, thankfully, and that's what's happening today. And when we ran this through Southern Actuarial Services, the requirement was about $2.5 million a year. Today we would collect $2.7 million. And again, that should be really our low point in this plan.
I understand. Thank you.
All right, anybody else have any questions? Representative Buckner? There you go.
So the tax commissioners that are already in a plan will stay in that plan or have to come into this plan? I can't seem to find that anywhere.
Tax commissioners that were here prior to 2011 are in the state ERS system.
Right.
And again, since then, we have 81 new tax commissioners. So
Right.
3 elections down, we're probably not going to have anybody left that would be in ERS, so this may be their only plan. As a matter of fact, I have 3 neighboring counties in Chattooga County, Murray County, and Catoosa County they were elected in 2016, and they have no retirement plan whatsoever, other than their own individual retirement account. So for the tax commissioners that will be here 8 years down the road, this may be the only plan most of them have.
Okay, so what if there are people that are in ERS that are here 8 years down the road? Are they gonna be able to stay in ERS, or will they have to transfer into this plan if there's any tax commissioner out there that's in ERS?
They could, technically, if they're still around 8 years from now, they could be in both plans. Now, again, we're excluded now if you come into office, and over half our members are new members in the last 2 elections. I will tell you, in my county, we could not be involved in both plans. If this plan passed and I decided to go into it, I would have to give up my other plan. But that's kind of a county-by-county decision. But technically, you could be in both plans, but by the time we get 3 elections down the road, you're talking about a handful of people, if there's any.
Right.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that the ones that were there wouldn't be forced to move out of that one into this one. It's really what my question was.
No, but this is really a plan for those that aren't in state ERS, which again, by the time we get next year's election now, will be probably 120 to 125 of our 159 members who will not have a retirement plan, and this would be their only option.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Representative Bentley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you don't mind, I want to go back to the time frame, 2011, 2016. Can you kind of reiterate that a little bit so I can have a better understanding?
Well, 2011 is when tax commissioners were excluded from state ERS.
Okay.
And since then, we have had 2 elections, 2012 and 2016, where we've had 81 new tax commissioners who are
Okay.
no longer eligible for state ERS.
Okay. Got it.
How do you get to 30?
Representative Wilkerson?
Okay, I'm trying to do some quick math in my head. I apologize. So lines 176 says that the most you can get is 20 years of credible service. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, then I flip over to line 199, and it says you'll be paid $12 per month for each credible year of service, I guess, for each credible year of service in the plan. $12 per month
$12 per month with a limit of 20 years. That's right.
of 20 years. So does that mean it's the maximum you can get is $240 a month? Or am I not adding something up real quick?
The maximum would be actually $34,560 with 20 years in. Is your yearly maximum, which is about $2,800 a month. That would be with 20 years of credible service. So it's $12 per month.
Yep.
Yeah.
Walk me
Times 20 years. So 12 times 12 times 20.
12 times 12 times 20 is what?
So you have to have 8 years vested. After 8 years, it would be about $1,100 a month.
About 1,100. Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Eventually it will.
All right.
Questions. So 81 new tax commissioners don't have state retirement.
That's correct.
But do they, if they have retirement with their local local governments? I'm sorry. This doesn't, what happens if they do have retirement with their local governments, local board of
that would be-
commissioners or something?
It's a county decision. If the county wants to pay for that, they can. My county would not allow it. My sheriff, my probate judge, and my clerk of court, who have a legislatively approved plan, are not included in local retirement because they don't want to pay for two plans out of local funds. Technically, this wouldn't be local funds, but, so that's a local decision. I will tell you that it's becoming more and more a trend that there is no local retirement. And out of 159 counties, there's a lot of smaller counties who do not have, certainly don't have pension plans. Often they may offer a 401k type plan, which is really just your own money. So that is really the only option I'm finding most of our tax commissioners have today, is just their own 401k type IRA plan.
So I know we're talking about tax commissioners right now, but it sounds like other constitutional officers locally may not have a local retirement plan. So are we gonna be at some point coming back, having a discussion about, adding those officials into
Well,
the retirement plan possibly?
They're where we're trying to be. They have their
They
own
have.
retirement fund, so they're pretty well set up. We're just trying to get there. So
Okay.
they already have their retirement fund.
All the others, the sheriff,
Mhm.
probate judge, of course, I know those, and the, who else we have?
Magistrate, judge,
Clerk of court,
clerk of
okay.
court.
All those have that.
And the
Tax
reason why
commissioners only
we
one.
were excluded was because we were already in the state ERS up until 2011. And
Okay, well, thank you all for your questions. This helped me,
Thank you.
understand.
Representative Martin.
All those are good things, and I mean, I think to go forward, but again, but what we're looking for right now is just to get how much it costs. We can debate how deep we want to go, or if it's $11 or $10 a month or $2 a fee and all that later, correct, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
At the end of the day, it's always somebody's money. You said it's your money. I mean, all this money that we're taking to fund these defined benefit plans was somebody's money. So I don't want to be flippant when we say that we're somehow, because there's a lot of people out there that are paying money that are allowing us to fund these defined benefit plans, and all they have is a 401k.
that's right.
I just think we just got to be careful.
I meant there's no government money put into that. That's just their own. I have one too, but it's just funded through my own money. So I meant no
and an employee
no public funds.
and perhaps an employer match.
Yeah, I don't have one of those, but yeah, then there would be. But yeah, most of them do not have any public funds. Yeah.
All right, what's the will of the committee?
I move to pass this study.
We got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, like sign. All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the only thing standing between us and lunch, I believe now, is House Bill 662. Mr. Chairman? I think he wanted to change it though, didn't he?
This is very similar to Chairman Martin's bill. Mine just sets a maximum of 6% on the annual rate, and that was the thing that we were going to change in the legislation in order to get numbers for all the things that we're looking for. That's basically the bill. It's very similar to. It doesn't go as far as as Chairman Martin's did, but it will give us the one of the numbers that we need. I think 6.75 would be a good number there if the committee so deems to amend the rate to 6.75.
All right, is there any questions for the chairman on this? We got a motion to move it forward to actuarial. Is there a second? Second. All right, got a motion and a second. Any discussion on that?
I'd like to move an amendment, Mr. Chairman, on line 34, strike 6, and replace that with 6.75.
All right, got a motion to amend line 34 from 6% to 6.75%. Is there a second? Got a second? All right, any discussion on the amendment? And just for clarification from the chair, with what we've done, we're gonna get an actual one, which will be about 7.25. This will be at 6.5, so we'll have a 0.5% difference in the two studies. Is that how we all kind of?
His doesn't have a study, but the board is already doing 7.25.
But they'll do the actuary on reality, which is about 7.25, and Jim's nodding his head, so we're.
Okay.
All right. All right, any other discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, we'll call for the question. All those in favor of the amendment, raise your right hand. Any opposed, same sign. The amendment passes. Now we'll move to the passing the bill on to actuarial data. This is 662 as amended. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Any opposed? Motion passes.
If I could have everybody's attention just a minute. I want to thank everybody for coming today and being very patient with us on this. We've, I think, done some really good work today. I wanted to let the committee know that we have lunch for you. It's in room 505. If you want to so partake. And I can't think of any other business before the committee. I want to thank all the members that showed up today. Thank you very much for taking time out for this. And thank the audience for being here today. We're adjourned.